know absolutely nothing about legal aid, nothing at all.
Well, I think it's in any bother at all. They can apply for legal aid now. I don't know how you go about applying for it now.
You go to I know you go to Citizens Advice to find out about it. When you're in trouble with the law, you get it for free, get advice for free.
Well, as far as I understand it, it's for people who can't afford to pay the set lawyers' fees. People who are unemployed, people in low wages, single families, people who do not have the finances to pay the fees that lawyers charge. And for people who are in trouble, whether it's criminal courts or civil courts, I think it's a good idea.
I think it's where people get money when they try to go to court and can't afford to pay for it themselves.
It's to help the less fortunate people get the legal things they deserve.
Well, I know they help people who haven't got the money to take a case to court.
Well, it's for the person who can't afford to go to a lawyer.
Not a great deal. I've never been in contact with it personally, but I just know people who have a fixed income, a small income, are entitled to it.
The Legal Aid Service provides advice, information and assistance to people who are unaware of their rights and obligations under the law. Most importantly, legal aid is funded by public money in order to make access and use of the law equal for everyone, irrespective of financial status.
Legal aid is basically the scheme whereby the government helps to meet the cost of employing a lawyer if the person wishing to consult a lawyer has insufficient means.
A large number of people in Scotland are unaware of the existence of legal aid. Of those who are aware, most think it's only available in criminal or matrimonial cases. They fail to realise it covers a much wider spectrum.
There are various types of legal aid which are available for all kinds of problems. For example,
housing issues, such as landlords failing to do repairs or rent, and eviction problems.
If you need help and assistance in writing a will.
Accident compensation on the road or at work.
Crime or drug-related offences.
Social security claims.
Problems concerning marriage and family.
Neighbours.
Bills and debts.
Employment.
Hire purchase and many other problems.
The types of legal aid available are
legal advice and assistance.
In the case of legal advice and assistance, that's the form of legal aid for helping people prepare their case. It's not actually for running the case itself, but it's to help people prepare their case. In the case of legal advice and assistance, the lawyer does more than merely apply. The lawyer actually assesses the client's contribution. They work out whether or not it's a form of legal question to which one can get legal advice and assistance. The lawyer tells the client how much their contribution would be under the legal advice and assistance, and the lawyer actually certifies the legal advice and assistance certificate.
Civil legal aid.
Civil legal aid is basically the scheme whereby the government helps to meet the cost of employing a solicitor to pursue a civil matter, such as an adoption, a divorce action, an action of damages arising out of a road traffic accident, or an industrial accident, or an application to the Employment Appeal Tribunal. These are matters which are all dealt with under the civil legal aid scheme.
Criminal legal aid.
Criminal legal aid is available to every person in custody. A person not in custody may also apply to the sheriff or district court for legal aid and is granted and refused by either the sheriff or the magistrate. It's entirely free and there is no appeal against the refusal of criminal legal aid.
There is also legal aid in emergency situations.
The emergency legal aid certificates are really part and parcel of the civil legal aid scheme, whereby if there is an emergency as described, for example an interdict situation or an emergency in respect of maintenance payments, then normally a legal aid application will be lodged for civil legal aid, and at the same time an emergency certificate will be asked for. The purpose being that rather than wait the 6 to 8 weeks that the application takes to be processed, a decision on legal aid will be made straight away. For example, a committee at the moment sits every Tuesday afternoon, and that's the advantage of the emergency certificate, because once the emergency certificate has been granted, the solicitor can go ahead and raise proceedings without further delay.
However, legal aid is not available in some cases.
Legal aid is not available in situations where it is not reasonable that it be granted, or in situations where the applicant has other facilities available with which to finance his lawyer, such as he is a member of a motoring organisation which makes the services of a lawyer available, or he is a member of a trade union which makes the services of a lawyer available, or perhaps he's covered in the particular circumstances of the case by his insurance policy. Also, legal aid is not available if the income or capital of the applicant is very high.
As an illustration of the legal aid process involved, consider the case of Mrs. Harper.
Some months ago, Mrs. Harper reported to her landlord a problem concerning dampness on her kitchenette and bedroom walls. Since then, the landlord has failed to do anything about the situation.
Recently, severe weather conditions have resulted in the problem increasing. The dampness is now so bad that her wallpaper has started to come away from the walls. Mrs. Harper is now planning to sue her landlord for failing to carry out the necessary repairs and for compensation for damage to her property.
If you think you might need legal aid, where would you go?
Well, a solicitor, obviously. I don't know, you may well get advice from a consumer advice bureau or something like that, but that's all.
I would think to a solicitor first, probably.
The Assistance Advice Bureau would be able to give you advice. Consumer standards might be able to help. You should be able to get advice from the social work department. Other than that, you'd have to go to a lawyer that displays the solicitor that displays the legal aid sign.
Citizens Advice Bureau? That's about the only place, or a lawyer.
I don't honestly know. Going to solicitors, possibly Citizens Advice Bureaus, don't know.
A member of the public can go to a solicitor's office displaying the logo sign, a legal aid office, a Citizens Advice Bureau, a law centre. Solicitors' names and addresses also appear in the telephone book, Yellow Pages, also Thomson telephone directories. I would strongly advise people to consult solicitors who are either near their homes or where they work, or on a convenient bus or train route. They are likely to be going to the solicitors on a number of occasions, and the cost of travelling can be quite considerable.
The first place I went to was the Citizens Advice Bureau. When I went in, the man showed me a list of lawyers that dealt with my particular type of problem. Then he helped me choose a suitable lawyer and he arranged an appointment for me.
Glasgow district and surrounding.
I was a wee bit apprehensive at first about going to see the lawyer, but he was really quite understanding, and he told me that he thought I should seek some sort of compensation from the landlord.
You do have a reasonably good case. I'll now intimate a claim to your
When you
landlord.
first apply for legal aid, your income and savings will be assessed to determine whether you are eligible.
If you are receiving supplementary benefit or family income supplement, you will automatically qualify.
However, your solicitor will advise you on whether you will have to pay a contribution. This will vary according to your capital and income.
Approximately 60 to 70% of the population are eligible for some kind of legal aid.
Mrs. Harper first obtains help from a solicitor under the Legal Advice and Assistance Scheme.
This enables her to get preliminary advice, such as a letter written to her landlord and a surveyor's report on the extent of the damage done to her home.
Well, at first the lawyer tried to get an out-of-court settlement, but the landlord didn't want to know. He wasn't really prepared to do anything about the dampness or the mess to the wallpaper. So the lawyer advised that I apply for civil legal aid and then perhaps take the case to court.
The Civil Legal Aid Scheme covers action in most Scottish civil court proceedings. Eligibility for civil legal aid is not decided by your own lawyer, but by the Legal Aid Committee.
Your lawyer will submit the application form SLA3 on your behalf to the Legal Aid Committee, along with details of your case.
Civil legal aid can be granted by the solicitor submitting applications to the Legal Aid Committee together with statements from the applicant, from witnesses, medical reports and other documentation supporting the application. The committee has to decide each application on its merits, and to do so there are 3 tests applied. First, whether the person has a probable cause. Second, whether it is reasonable to grant legal aid. And third, whether the person is financially eligible.
However, one part of the form SLA3 is detached and sent to the Scottish Home and Health Department, who assess whether you are financially eligible and fix the maximum contribution.
Once your financial situation has been assessed, this information will then be sent to the Legal Aid Committee.
At the Legal Aid Committee office, a decision is made as to whether it is reasonable to grant a legal aid certificate.
If the application passes both the Scottish Home and Health Department and the Legal Aid Committee tests, an offer and acceptance form is issued.
This confirms the amount of contribution and how it is to be paid.
However, if no contribution is payable, the legal aid certificate is granted immediately.
Once it has been decided that Mrs. Harper qualifies for civil legal aid, the lawyer can act on her behalf.
Unfortunately, however, your landlord is still refusing to make any form of acceptable offer. Accordingly, I'll now draft a writ which I'll send to you to be approved, and if you could then send it back to me. What then happens is that I take the writ to court to have the Sheriff Clerk warrant it to enable me to serve it on the landlord. Thereafter, the landlord is allowed an opportunity to...
We have looked at how legal aid is obtained by an individual, but can it be made available to tenants' associations, women's groups, pensioners' organisations and other community groups?
Legal aid is not available to groups as such. Legal aid is, however, available to the individual members of a group. For example, if a tenants group had a serious dampness problem, the group itself would be unable to apply for legal aid. The individual members of the group would, however, be able to apply for legal aid to raise actions in their own name against the landlord who was delaying or refusing to implement his obligations.
Well, the problem with the legal aid scheme and the problem with the legal scheme system as a whole is that it doesn't really cater for the interests of groups of people. If 1,000 tenants have all got the same problem, they can't take legal action except under some very specific circumstances as a group. It's not possible. So that means each person has got to go through the court system themselves.
Not enough people are aware that they might be eligible for legal aid. So what can be done to rectify this?
I think that the availability could be advertised on television, which I understand is the most effective form of advertising. Secondly, there's more legal firms set up in high streets and shopping precincts. The display of legal aid stickers and the like obviously makes the scheme more available. Thirdly, I think that help and advice giving agencies such as social work departments and the like could be encouraged to refer their clients' problems to a solicitor in the expectation that the problem is amenable to legal redress. Finally, I think that schools could be encouraged to educate young people to see the problems which they will encounter as young adults, problems such as difficulties with employers, difficulties with the DHSS, housing difficulties, etc., as legal problems which the legal aid scheme can assist them in solving.
If you think you have a problem which you feel may be a legal matter, do not hesitate to ask a solicitor for advice and assistance under the legal aid scheme.
I think that people's attitudes to lawyers vary very dramatically.
I've had very little to do with lawyers apart from when my husband died and making my will and that sort of thing and buying a house. I haven't had a lot to do with lawyers, but I've always found them very helpful when I have.
Well, there's some good and some not so good, but they're a necessity.
I think that they're pretty fly people, you know, pretty cunning. They do a good living anyway.
Most of them do a reasonably enough job.
Charge too much, but they do a good job.
One of the main problems that people feel is that they're scared to go to a lawyer because lawyers' fees are so high. Obviously, the Law Society keep a check on lawyers' fees, and lawyers' fees are charged accordingly. And again, if you are the kind of person whose income is going to be prohibitive, then you generally will be able to get legal aid.
If people are worried about whether they'll have to pay the lawyer something, there is a £5 fixed fee interview scheme. If the lawyer participates in that scheme, and they don't have to, but if they do participate in that scheme, for £5 they ought to be prepared to tell you what the basic position is. I may say that it's regarded as ethically necessary that a solicitor uses all legal aid opportunities that there are available. So if you go to see a lawyer and you ask for the £5 fixed fee interview, and if it turns out that you undoubtedly be eligible for legal advice and legal advice and assistance in preparation of your criminal legal aid application, the lawyer will put you onto that legal advice and assistance scheme and you won't even have to pay your £5.
Legal aid means that the government can pay part or even all of the solicitor's bill.
This means that legal help may be free or at a low cost, providing your income and savings are low.
If you have to pay towards legal aid, the amount will depend on such things as your income and savings,
whether you are married,
the number of children you have,
and whether your husband or wife works.
But remember, if you're paying a contribution or receiving legal aid free for a civil proceeding, you might have to refund the legal aid from your winnings. So ask a solicitor for details.
Here are a few ways you can find a solicitor who deals with legal aid.
Look for the legal aid logo.
It is displayed in many solicitors' windows.
It means the solicitor on the premises does undertake legal aid work.
Alternatively, you could go to a solicitor who has been recommended to you by someone who has faced a similar problem.
Or just ask for help at the nearest Citizens Advice Bureau,
law centres,
or legal aid office.
All these places can be found in the telephone directory or yellow pages.
So if you think you may have a legal problem,
you really shouldn't hesitate about going to see a solicitor who will happily discuss any problem you have.
Go and see a lawyer and ask. If you turn out not to be eligible for legal aid, they should be able to tell you fairly speedily about your chances.
You can go to almost every legal firm, and certainly to every legal firm which displays the legal aid sticker. So, if you think that you may have a legal problem, look for the legal aid logo.